wind swept across the frozen plains of Arizona like a wild animal, dragging dust and cold into every crack of the land. Cole Remington leaned against the corral fence, his breath misting in the early dawn. He had lived alone for years, a man carved from quiet and regret, surviving off the soil and the horses he bred. The emptiness of the land suited him. It never asked questions, never betrayed secrets. But that morning, something broke the silence. In the distance, through the silver light of the rising sun, he saw a lone rider stumbling across the prairie, then falling hard. Cole rushed forward, boots crushing the frosted grass. When he reached the fallen rider, he froze. It wasn't a man, it was a woman, wrapped in torn buckskin, her long dark hair tangled with dirt and blood. Her eyes, when they fluttered open, were fierce even in pain. "They're coming," she gasped, voice ragged from thirst. "Don't! Let them find me." Cole didn't ask who they were. He could already guess. The bounty posters in town had told everyone about the Apache woman who'd killed Captain Holloway. Without hesitation, he lifted her carefully into his arms, feeling the tremor of her breath against his chest. She was light, too light, her ribs sharp beneath his hands. Inside his cabin, the fire crackled low. He laid her on his cot, poured water into a tin cup, and began cleaning the blood from her shoulder. She flinched when the cloth touched her skin. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe here." Her eyes searched his face, confused by his calmness. "Why?" she whispered. "You don't even know me." Cole paused, then said, "I don't need to." He wrapped the wound carefully, his hands steady from years of ranch work. Her breathing slowed, exhaustion taking over. Outside, the wind howled again, and the firelight flickered over her face, revealing both strength and sorrow. Cole watched her for a moment, realizing she was no criminal, just another soul broken by men's cruelty. He'd seen that look before, in soldiers returning from the war, in the mirror every morning. She stirred slightly, murmuring words in Apache, too soft for him to understand, then fell into uneasy sleep. As the night deepened, Cole sat by the window, eyes scanning the open land. Somewhere out there, riders were moving. He could almost hear the faint thud of hooves carried on the cold wind. They would come looking, bounty hunters, maybe soldiers, maybe both. He could have turned her in, taken the reward, gone back to his quiet life. But the thought made his stomach twist. He'd done enough turning away in his time. He wasn't about to do it again. When he finally closed his eyes, sleep brought no peace. He dreamed of fire sweeping through the desert, of drums echoing under the stars, and of a young girl crying as soldiers burned her home. He woke with a start, sweat on his brow, the sound of phantom gunfire fading into the dawn wind. The woman was awake now, sitting weakly on the cot, her dark eyes watching him. "You dreamed," she said quietly. "Yes," Cole replied, rubbing his eyes. "It seems the past doesn't let go easy." She nodded as if she understood too well. She ate little of the stew he offered, but drank the water gratefully. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then said, "Nyla." The name sounded like a whisper from the wind itself. "I'm Cole," he replied. "You can rest here till you're stronger." She looked away, her hands trembling slightly. "You shouldn't help me," she murmured. "They'll come for you too." Cole gave a faint smile. "Let them come," he said. "This ranch has seen worse storms," but even as he spoke, his gut tightened. He could feel danger gathering beyond the hills. By mid-afternoon, Nyla was strong enough to stand, though she leaned heavily against the wall. She moved quietly, her instincts sharp, her gaze flicking toward the windows. "You trust me?" she asked suddenly. Cole paused at the stove. "I trust what I see," he answered. "And I don't see a killer." Her expression flickered, torn between disbelief and gratitude. She reached for her wound, wincing. "Holloway killed my people," she said finally. "Women, children. I only lived because I ran." The words hung heavy in the air. Cole's jaw clenched. "Then maybe it's time someone else ran for a change." That night, the wind picked up again, sweeping across the plains with a sound like distant drums. Cole sat outside, shotgun across his knees, eyes on the horizon. A faint glow appeared to the east, campfire light too steady to be chance. He stood slowly, his heart beating hard. Nyla stepped out beside him, wrapped in his old coat. "They're here," she said softly. He nodded. In the flicker of moonlight, he could see the shapes of riders cresting the ridge, torches swaying in the dark. Kane's bounty men. There was no turning back now. Cole went inside, checking his ammunition, every movement calm, methodical. "Stay behind the wall," he told her. But she shook her head. "If they take me, they'll kill you too." He met her gaze, steady, unflinching. "Then we'll make sure they don't." Outside, the sound of horses grew louder, closer. A voice called out through the night. "Remington! We know she's there. Hand her over and we'll spare your ranch." Cole didn't move. He blew out the lantern, plunging the cabin into darkness. "You picked the wrong night," he muttered, loading the last shell into his shotgun. The first bullet shattered the window. Glass rained down, and Nyla ducked behind the table. Cole fired back, hitting the dirt near their horses to scatter them. The attackers cursed, circling wide. The ranch, once a place of peace, became a battleground. The fire's glow reflected in Nyla's eyes as she clutched the rifle he handed her. "Can you shoot?" he asked. She nodded once. "I learned from my father before they killed him." Her voice didn't tremble now. She took position by the window, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight, every bit the warrior she'd been forced to become. As the gunfire echoed across the plains, Cole felt a strange calm wash over him. He wasn't fighting out of obligation anymore. He was fighting for something he couldn't quite name, honor maybe, or redemption. In the flickering firelight, he saw Nyla reload, steady her aim, and fire with precision that stunned him. The men outside shouted, retreating into the shadows. For a moment only silence remained. Cole looked at her, chest heaving. "You said they were coming," he said quietly. "Now they know we're ready." She met his eyes, and for the first time, there was no fear, only fierce trust. Outside, torches still burned on the hills, a reminder that the storm wasn't over. But for that night, in that fragile peace between gunfire and dawn, Cole felt something he hadn't felt in years, a purpose that mattered. Nyla leaned against the wall, exhaustion in her eyes but gratitude in her silence. The wind howled one last time through the broken window, carrying the scent of smoke and rain. Cole stared into the darkness, knowing this was only the beginning. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. By dawn, the land was still except for the faint whisper of wind over the frostbitten earth. Cole Remington stepped onto the porch, shotgun in hand, eyes scanning the ridge. His ranch, once a place of peace and labor, now looked like a battlefield waiting to happen. Nyla stood behind him, her dark hair loose, her expression calm but fierce. The smell of gunpowder still lingered from the night before. Then, through the haze of early light, came the sound he'd been expecting, the rhythmic thunder of approaching horses. Kane and his bounty men were here, circling like wolves that had tasted blood. "Remington!" Kane's voice boomed from the ridge, low and cruel. "You got something that belongs to the law." His laughter echoed across the plains, thick with mockery. Cole stepped off the porch, his boots crunching in the frozen dirt. "Law?" he called back. "You mean Holloway's law, the kind that kills women and children?" A murmur of anger rolled through the bounty men. Kane's grin widened. "You talk mighty brave for a man about to die." Cole cocked the shotgun. "Then I guess I'd better make it worth the trouble." The silence that followed was heavy, electric. The first shot broke it. A bullet whistled past Cole's ear, splintering the post behind him. He fired back, sending Kane's men scrambling for cover. The ranch exploded into chaos, gunfire cracking, horses screaming, dirt flying. Nyla ducked behind the trough, returning fire with the precision of someone who had known war her whole life. Cole reloaded, every motion sharp, practiced. "They'll burn the place," she shouted over the noise. "Let 'em try," he yelled back. Bullets tore through the barn doors, hay igniting in sudden flames that licked the dawn sky with fury. Through the smoke, Cole saw a familiar face, Sheriff Wallace, riding with Kane's men. His badge glinted coldly in the morning light. "Wallace," Cole bellowed. "You're supposed to uphold the law." The sheriff sneered, spitting into the dust. "Law don't feed a man's pockets, Remington. Gold does." The betrayal hit like a knife to the gut. Cole fired, hitting the sheriff's hat clean off, but the man dove for cover behind the troughs. "Hand her over," Wallace yelled. "You don't owe her nothing." Cole glanced at Nyla, who was bleeding from a graze along her arm, yet refused to yield. "You're wrong," Cole said. "I owe her my conscience." Then came the charge. Kane's men rode in hard, torches blazing, circling the cabin. Cole grabbed Nyla's hand, pulling her toward the back. "We hold the barn," he shouted. They ran through smoke and falling sparks, coughing, choking on the acrid heat. Inside, Cole overturned barrels, setting up a line of fire. Nyla took aim through a crack in the wood, firing at shadows that flitted across the rising light. "You should have left me," she whispered between breaths. "Would have been easier." Cole gave a small, grim smile. "Maybe, but a man who runs from doing right don't sleep easy." Suddenly, the sound of hooves thundered again, but this time from the opposite direction. Kane turned sharply, confusion flickering across his scarred face. The horizon erupted in movement. Riders, dozens of them, their paint glinting red and black under the sunrise. Apache. They came fast, silent, and deadly, their arrows slicing through the air. Kane shouted orders, but it was too late. The bounty men broke formation as the first wave hit, chaos tearing through their ranks. Cole froze for a heartbeat, realizing what was happening. Nyla's people had come. "You told them?" he asked, breathless. She nodded, eyes glistening. They never stopped watching. The Apache swept through the ranch like a storm, reclaiming justice the way the desert reclaims its own. Wallace tried to flee, but a stray bullet caught him in the back, Kane's bullet meant for someone else. The sheriff fell, face first into the dust he'd sold his soul for. Kane himself fought like a cornered beast, revolver blazing, rage twisting his features. He caught sight of Nyla and aimed, hatred burning. "You should have stayed dead," he snarled. Cole didn't think. He raised his shotgun and fired. The blast echoed like thunder, and Kane fell backward into the mud, his revolver spinning from his hand. The battle raged for minutes that felt like hours. Then slowly the gunfire faded into silence. Smoke drifted through the rising sun, mixing with the smell of blood and dust. Horses snorted nervously. The Apache riders gathered the wounded, their faces stoic, but their eyes glimmering with something deeper, recognition, respect. Nyla stood among them, shoulders squared, her wound bandaged, her gaze steady. One of the elders approached her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have done well," he said in their language. She looked back at Cole, standing alone amid the wreckage of his ranch, his hat in his hands. When she walked toward him, her steps were slow, deliberate. "It's over," she said quietly. Cole nodded. "For now?" His voice was tired but gentle. She looked around at the damage, the burned stables, the bullet-scarred fences, the bodies. "You risked everything for me." He met her eyes. "Didn't feel like a risk," he said softly. "Felt like the first right thing I've done in years." The words hung between them, heavy and true. For a long time, they said nothing, only listening to the wind as it carried away the smoke and sorrow. The morning sun painted the plains gold again. When the lawmen arrived 2 days later, they found Kane's body, Wallace's badge, and Holloway's old ledger, proof of every crime committed against Nyla's people. Her name was cleared, and Cole's testimony made it so. The ranch was ruined, but his heart wasn't. The Apache helped rebuild what they could before riding back into the desert. Nyla stayed long enough to see the new fences rise, her eyes always drifting toward the horizon. "You'll be sheriff now," she said one evening. "This land needs someone who remembers mercy." Cole smiled faintly. "I never asked for it." She touched his hand. "That's why you're right for it." When dawn came again, she stood saddling her horse. The air was cool, the sky washed clean. Cole walked out, the brim of his hat shadowing his eyes. "You could stay," he said quietly. Nyla looked at him for a long moment, her gaze soft but certain. "My people need me," she said. But if the world ever forgets what you did today, we won't, he nodded slowly. Ride safe, she smiled, small, sad, but full of strength. You too, Sheriff. And with that she turned her horse toward the mountains, her silhouette merging with the sunrise like a fading dream. Cole watched until she vanished into the light. The silence of the plains returning once more. Around him, the land seemed different now, emptier yet somehow fuller. He holstered his gun, walked back to the porch, and sat down listening to the wind. It carried faint echoes of drums and laughter, the promise of something beyond violence and grief. The desert had taken much from him, but in that brief crossing of two lives, it had also given back something he never thought he'd feel again: peace. And as the sun climbed over the Arizona horizon, Cole Remington, rancher turned lawman, whispered to the wind, "Guess I had something worth fighting for after all."